A wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Eamon Gebre, VP of Advisory and Investments at Sarwa. I'm joined by Regional Director at Involve Solutions, Mr. Abs Khan. And what we're going to be talking about today are critical mistakes that job applicants are making when they're looking for that right opportunity. Now, you may wonder, why is Sarwa talking about recruitment or talking about career planning? Well, if you think about it logically, we spent a lot of time talking about the best practices on how to achieve your financial goals. We talk about discipline. We talk about, making sure you invest with goals in mind. We talk about how to diversify your portfolio. Well, the inputs matter just as much as the output, really, at the end of the day. And that extends also to your career and career advancement. It goes without saying, the better career opportunities you have, the more chances you have for financial, I would say, success. And that also will translate into you achieving your financial goals at a better rate. So today, I have Mr. Abs Khan, who's no stranger to Sarwa, actually, who's going to be telling us some tips and tricks based on his 20 years of experience within the field. And I just want to say it's a pleasure having you here with us today, Abs.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for inviting me on, Eamon.
The pleasure is all ours. Look, I want to get some more of the admin things out of the way first. So first things first, I do want to make a disclaimer, and it's more if we do enter into discussions about financial planning here, we cannot tell the future. And I think this is also applicable even from an employment perspective as well, too, is that the job market can change quite quickly altogether, but we cannot predict the future. And our views today should not be interpreted as one-on-one financial advice. This is something, if we're talking from an investment perspective, do reach out to your financial advisor or one of ours here at our firm. Would be more than happy to have that chat with you. Or from a recruitment perspective, speak to a recruitment expert. We have one here with us today, so it's a great opportunity for us to have that discussion. Now, I've kind of kept you in the dark for a bit, Abs, but I think it'd be a good idea to introduce you to everyone here. Abs Khan, as I said, he's no stranger to us here at Sarwa because he's been instrumental in helping us find some amazing talent here, whether it extends from our product team or from our tech team. He's been really instrumental in helping us kind of drive the mission of Sarwa of making investing, available to everyone. And a little bit more context to this, he's been in the field for well over 20 years, 15 of which here in the UAE, and he is a leading expert when it comes to tech hiring across the region. Currently, he's heading the Middle East division of Involve Solutions. He partners with startups, scale-ups, and enterprises to deliver mid to senior level talent. He has a unique perspective because he's been here for quite some time. He's seen the region grow. He's seen companies pivot and change. So he's able to offer that guidance because he's been both an agency and also in-house with a number of companies within the region, and has also held key leadership positions at companies like Kareem and WeoBank, where he's actually helped develop high-performing teams right from the ground up. In addition to that, he's also taking on a number of clients, to help them with career coaching and help them navigate and essentially, helping them with their career, ambitions. And so we're happy to have you here with us, Abs, and we look forward to having a great discussion. And for all of those who joined us today, we want to make this as interactive as possible. We want you to get the most out of this. So if you do have questions, please feel free to put them right into the chat. We're going to be taking them up towards the end of the session itself. But in addition to that, we might also maybe throw a couple of poll questions your way every now and then, just to be able to kind of get a gauge of, what kind of, topics that you want us to cover. And in fact, I actually want to start with one initial poll, which is, what do you want to learn today? What do you want to learn that is going to help you get the most out of today? And it's a quick poll that I've just sent out to everybody. Would love to get your perspective so we can shape this presentation to be able to address those needs for you. So we definitely look forward to it. Now, there is, some, high level topics, Abs, that you and I have been discussing. And
Mhm.
I think they're very relevant to what's happening in the job market today, and also very relevant to the experience many individuals are going through when trying to find the right job opportunity. As I look at the survey responses right now, it's a mixed bag. You have individuals who want to get help on how to apply for roles. We have individuals who want to better understand the UAE job market. Also, people who are actively looking for jobs within the industry. Maybe it'd be a good idea if we can start with give us a little bit of a overlook, just an overview of the UAE job market. Maybe we can start with that.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, like, over the last 15 years, it's changed rapidly, right? So I moved here 2009, I think it was. And 15 years ago, we had to persuade people to come to Dubai, right? I think you've been here quite a long time as well, Eamon. So you know this. It's not as it's not as buoyant as it is now. But back then, you advertise a role, hardly anyone would apply for the job. Compared to now, we put an advert out, and within a few hours, we got hundreds of applicants. So
Mm,
I think it's a very different market to how it was back then. And right now, the market's busy. Back in the day, you'd always say, "Ah, it's summer, things are slowing down," right? We're now in July, but that's not the case anymore. The markets are constantly busy. There's lots and lots of people that are coming from all over the world that are coming here in their droves. High volume applications. So yeah, it's very busy right now.
Are you seeing a trend where maybe there's certain roles in which there's a number of individuals who are applying, or like is a uniform across all the different sectors of the UAE, or is it more specific to certain industries that we're seeing that there's a number of applicants?
Do you know what? It's no surprise. I did a quick search. I did some insights this week to see where the most applicants coming from, and it's no surprise that on LinkedIn, most jobs that are being hired right now are real estate, and that's obviously because of the boom, right?
Ah,
But if we look at it from a professional standpoint, it's quite high in IT. So IT and technology has increased about 35% year on year. Finance is about 20% year on year. So I think it's across the board. Companies are moving regional offices and regional headquarters to the regions. Therefore, you've got all of the core functions, which is also what we cover here at Involved Solutions. So we're busy across the board, whether it's come from finance, HR, marketing, or technology, which is where we focus on.
okay. So I have an idea as to what's made the UAE a very popular destination, but I mean, it's just an idea more anecdotal than anything else. But what are the reasons, or what are your candidates saying to you as to their reasons why they want to move here and find a job in the UAE?
I think the reasons never changed over the last few years, right? It's that appeal of income-free money, you know? People just want that income-free tax. They don't want to pay tax on their money. Cost of living has gone up across the US, across Europe. So I think people still think, come to Dubai, I don't have to pay tax on my earnings. Uh, Look, the weather, that was my key thing to come here
Mm.
15 years ago. I was fed up of the rain. So I think that's driving it. But also people see the UAE as somewhere that's growing, right? It's a metropolitan city that's continuously growing. It's just advancing all the time, right?
Right, right. We've even seen changes to packages as well, too, or the structure of packages. So I remember distinctly, when I was at the HSBC, just a few years back, where it was the norm to see salary certificates where you'll see housing allowance,
Mm.
education allowance. There were cases that I've seen, and I'm not kidding, cigarette allowance. And that must have been like an old school contract more than anything else. An individual's been there for a number of years. But I've seen employers kind of move away from this structure of having allowances and in favor of just having a salary, a fixed salary.
Yeah, I think as like I said, with the volume of applications that we're getting across the board right now, employers have got the choice of who they want to hire, and it's almost a race to the bottom for a lot of people because you get people coming from all over, all corners of the world. They're coming here and they're as long as they're getting more money than back in their home country, they're happy, but they don't realize how expensive it is to live here in the UAE. So yes, 15 years ago. I was hiring for one client here, big telecoms company, and they would give a container. Bring your furniture
Oh,
with
wow.
you.
Okay.
Yeah, you wouldn't get anything like that now. A lot of clients that we speak to now do not even offer a relocation package. Because people are so willing to come here. I mean, the worst thing that we see is people that had come here without even getting a job. To come here with no visa, no medical insurance, and then start looking for a job. I mean, we always say in recruitment, finding a job is a job in itself.
Yeah.
But I think it's easier said than done, right? If you're doing it in your home country, like if you live in the UK, you're looking for a job in the UK, it's okay to potentially leave your job to find a job, but to do it here, to come here, to risk it
Mm.
all, where it's so expensive, I think that's crazy. But yeah, going back to packages have definitely changed. Education allowance is something that people don't realize the cost of schooling here. I mean, you've got a couple of kids, Eamon, you know, and a lot of packages don't include that either now. So yeah.
I get it. I understand. It used to be a point where it was 4 degrees of separation. Now it's extending to 6 degrees of separation, 8 degrees of separation to be able to find that right opportunity. And that actually takes us to our next subject, which is, well, we know that the competition is quite fierce now. And we need basically every advantage that we can take to be able to find the right opportunity. And some mediums are much more effective than others. So
Mm.
growing up for me, it was as simple as, and I don't want to date myself here, but essentially it was literally knocking on doors and saying, "Hey, are you hiring?" But that was many, many years ago. That's not necessarily the case anymore. Then it went to online applications. Now there's many different mediums, and some are more effective than others, and that changes from time to time. And so I wanted to have a discussion with you and also the audience. What is a medium that you typically use when you're trying to find a job within the UAE? Are you using more LinkedIn? Are you using company career pages? Are you using agencies? That's an avenue that, for a lot of senior executives that I speak to, they typically use a recruitment agent. Is it WASTA, personal connections, personal referral? No shame in the game. That is unfortunately sometimes a reality of trying to find the right job. Are you going to job fairs? Are you networking? Are you going to events? Would love to get your insights on that. And also, really more importantly, Abs, would love to get your insight on what's the best way to find the right job.
Well, I'm obviously going to say use an agency. Come to me. But I think, look, I think it's a little bit of everything. You know, it's what's going to work, but definitely an agency. That's what we're here to do, right? And I think one common misconception with a lot of candidates is the agency, we're paid by our clients to find the right candidates. Okay. So a lot of candidates get quite frustrated when they come to an agency saying, "Hey, Abs, get us a job." You know, they reach out to my team and say, "Right, get us a job." And yes, we do always have an active talent pool where we're trying to find people, actively trying to find people jobs. But more often than not, if not all the time, we are driven by the client in terms of what the client needs. Now, for the candidate and for themselves trying to find the job, I think if they've got Wasta, great, but let's be honest, most of our listeners here aren't going to have that Wasta unless they've got that personal connection, which always helps. And I think that's, a great way to get a job. If you have a friend that works in a company and they can get you in there, brilliant. Most of us don't have that, especially people that are relocating. So they do need to rely on themselves, engaging with people like ourselves, other professionals in the market, and ultimately networking themselves. Like you said, Eamon, right? However long ago it was, I'm not going to age you, you'd knock on doors. And it was literally like that. I remember when I was 16, I knocked on doors to get my first job.
Yep.
But now it's different. We have social media. We have platforms that enable us to get jobs. And I think if you look back in the day, it was your CV that was the most important thing. And I think now it's definitely going to be LinkedIn. Or if you're a specialist, maybe an engineer, it might be GitHub or whatever it might be. But if you're not utilizing those tools, you're not giving yourself the best chance possible. If we look at the UK market, they rely heavily on job boards. And
Oh,
so job boards will be used in parallel to LinkedIn or applications. So when they apply for jobs here in the UAE, our job boards aren't that great. Like Nakri or Monster, I don't remember the last time. We don't use them here in our business. For our business, we've got other tools that we would use, other technology that we engage, which helps us find those right candidates. So I think having an up-to-date profile on LinkedIn is probably going to be your key thing. Yes, you can apply from company pages, a company direct career page, but I've worked in-house. I know what it's like. You advertise a job in-house, you get 1,000 applications. More often than not, these companies don't have the right technology to screen all these thousands of applications that come through. So your
mhm.
application, you probably wonder why it's called the black hole. You send your CV to a company portal, you don't hear back. Why is that? They don't often have the technology enough to deal with all the applications they're getting. If you're lucky, you might get a rejection email, but more often than not, you don't hear anything. So, what we're able to do is if they come through our company portal, our own involved solutions, or from a LinkedIn advert, then we can actively find those best candidates using the technology that we have, the AI capabilities. But really, I think if you are looking for a job, your best avenue is going to be LinkedIn here. And then we can talk
Mm.
about how to, improve that part of it as well. Uh,
Well, interestingly enough, that's majority of the audience has actually responded that LinkedIn is their primary portal to be able to look for jobs. And I would agree with that also, from a personal perspective, that that's where the jobs are. That's where the employers are. It's the direct gateway. I mean, if you think about it this way, like if I had a CV, beautiful CV, I have to go website to website in order to apply on the company portal. And as you said, it might go into a black hole. They might not have the right filtration process. But on LinkedIn, I have many different chances to be able to get that employer's attention. I could not only apply directly through LinkedIn if they have that job posting up there, I can message the person who's potentially in a position to hire. I could also build up my social media profile or build up my LinkedIn profile to be able to capture their attention. So it makes sense as to why the audience and also a number of individuals that I talk to, they primarily think of LinkedIn versus maybe years ago it was bait.com and Naukri Golf and Indeed, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah.
Um, but on the point of using an agent, I mean, is this something in which the candidate has to go out and seek an agent or a recruiter, or is it a recruiter is going to find that talent? And I'm not too
Okay.
sure how this operates in this
Yeah,
sense.
I think look, it's a bit of both, and I think it comes back to LinkedIn. We'll touch on it in a second, but in terms of look, if an agency is hiring for a specific role, typically we have our talent pools that were people that we know we've engaged with in the past. Okay. If we have to go and headhunt, where are we going to headhunt from? In this region where we don't have the job board strength like we have in Europe or the US, we do rely on LinkedIn. So what I'm going to say to you is if your CV is not a mirror image, sorry, if your LinkedIn is not a mirror image of your CV in terms of talking about your achievements, what have you delivered? Then how are we as consultants going to find you, or how are my team going to find you when we're looking to? Because a lot of the recruitment here is done by headhunting. So we need to find someone like Eamon. How do we find someone like Eamon if Eamon hasn't made his LinkedIn as visible as possible? And I think
Mm.
that's the trick that a lot of people aren't doing. They're not optimizing their LinkedIn so we can best find them. We use things like Boolean searches, X-ray searches. We've got AI capability now that we can utilize and run bots and find these people that we need. But if you're not selling yourself on LinkedIn, you're doing yourself a huge disservice.
Let's see. So if you had to pick one strategy to focus on, it would be LinkedIn. That is essentially the most optimal approach to
If
help.
I was looking for a job right now, I'd make sure my LinkedIn was up to date. I'd make sure that I was putting out posts. I was making sure I was liking posts, and I'd be applying via there as well as reaching out to recruitment agents or recruitment consultants that are specialists in my field.
I got you. I got you. Thank you so much.
And I think
Um,
I think touching on that as well is when you're actually on these job portals or you're on these LinkedIn and you're applying for jobs, it's apply for jobs that you're relevant for.
hmm,
More often than not, we will see the same candidate applying for 10 different jobs.
hmm,
And if you can imagine that, Eamon, it's just devaluing what you do.
hmm,
If you're not applying for exactly what you're suitable for, then where are you adding value?
hmm. So that's the
Does
impression
that
that
make sense?
employer would have, essentially, when they see someone applying to multiple roles within the company, then they essentially discount that application, is what
No,
you're saying.
well, look, you apply for what you're suitable for. You can't be suitable for 10 different types of jobs, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Well, I'll try. To really
People
get
don't
it.
try. I mean, people do try, but I think that's where people make the mistake. They think that if they apply for loads of different jobs, they'll be seen, but they're seen in a negative manner.
I see. I understand. I understand. Do you, okay, so we've talked about making sure that your LinkedIn is up to date, making sure you would try to stay as active as possible, potentially making a post, maybe potentially maybe liking certain articles or certain feeds that might come in. Do they have to be company specific or just in general, just some general activity to be noticed?
I think any activity, any way that you can get noticed is going to be promoting yourself. You know, if you're talking about what you know, I think if you're, if you're knowledgeable in a specific field, technology, industry, whatever, just putting those posts out there and engaging with the right people is going to have you highly visible
Okay.
to
And so this
everyone, whether it's going to be a hiring manager or whether it's going to be us.
I understand. So I can understand from a hiring manager perspective because maybe they might just stumble onto that candidate or that individual and they might say, "Hey, I think this person is the right fit for my company," and they may reach out to them themselves. But I would imagine as a recruiter, you're constantly scanning and looking for talent. So what stands out for you to say, "Hey, I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to this candidate
Yeah,
and
sure. Yeah, good point. I mean, you've got the typical, how long have they been in a certain company? Are they a job hopper? Are they changing jobs every year, every 6 months? And obviously, no one's going to be interested in that, right? So, what do we look for? We look for longevity, good tenure profiles as well. Have they listed? So, people do this on their CV as well as their LinkedIn. They have it more like a job description. But what should be the content of that should be actually what have you delivered? What action have you done? You know, what's been the results of what you've done? Yeah, what are the key takeaways? Because that's what we're looking for here. We're not looking for necessarily what tasks you did. It's like, what differentiates you from everybody else who does this job? Yeah, what impact have you made? I think that's
okay.
the key thing that I would look for, would really make me be like, hey, I'm going to speak to that guy.
I see. And is that quantifiable? Meaning, are we talking numbers or are we talking about more just a description of the outcome?
I think it depends in which case, but definitely numbers. You know, if you can talk percentages, values, but then if you've delivered something that's more tangible, you talk about you delivered something more tangible. So I think it would be case by case, but definitely there's no harm in numbers and figures. That definitely drives it home.
And we were going to talk about, the CV, right? The aspect of CVs. And I mean, I think those different schools of thought where it's like your cover letter matters. In some cases, it doesn't matter. What's the body of the CV matters more than anything else, and sometimes not so much. I mean, would love to get your insight on what's the best way to apply. So we've talked about LinkedIn, and this is the perspective of trying to be noticed. But now you found the job, you found it yourself, and you're trying to apply. What's the best practice when it comes to the CV or any other I would say variables to take into consideration when you're applying for a specific job that you want that job.
Yeah, I think so. There's no hard and fast rule that people will say, your CV should be 1 or 2 pages. And I don't think that's necessarily true. It's good to not waffle on your CV. Like, there shouldn't have be 7 pages if it could be three, but make everything relevant. If you've got 20 years of experience, for example, you might only want to talk about the last 7 years because that's what's relevant to the job that you're going for. So relevance is key. Um, you want to talk on your CV about what is going to be impacting the job that you're applying for. Okay. So
Okay.
what are the results that you've done? I keep saying about the results and the impacts and the achievements because that's what we really want to see on the CV. That's what's going to stand out.
Okay,
You
fair
know?
enough. Fair enough. Fair enough.
But I think people who get told only have your CV as 1 page or 2 page, look, you could be missing out key information, Eamon. I think if it takes 3 pages or 4 pages, have it. You don't need to talk about the job that you did 15, 20 years ago. What I would say is maybe focus on the last 2 or 3 jobs, if that covers the last 5 or 6 years, because more than likely that's what's going to be the experience that's going to be necessary to get you that next job that you're looking for.
fair, fair. And cover letter, is that still relevant? Let's
I'm
be
going to be
honest with
honest.
ourselves.
Myself and my team, we never look at a cover letter.
So you see the schools of thought changes on this from time to time. And I guess it also depends on the market conditions at that point as well, too.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're all busy, Eamon. I mean, if you got time to read a cover letter, I just don't. For us, it's speed delivers. and you need something to be impactful. And I think just going straight to your CV, understanding what they've done, where can they add value. That's for me, that's all I need to see.
And I just want to remind the audience, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate. We've got a wealth of knowledge here. Abs has been in the industry for quite some time. If it's something sector specific, industry specific, or maybe it's a hurdle you keep falling over, please don't hesitate to send a message over, and we'll take them up here in front of everyone. And if you want to be anonymous, that's absolutely fine as well too. Um, so let's just say you do manage to land the interview now, Abs, right?
Yeah.
So someone's reached out to you, whether it be the company directly or whether it be a recruiter, or maybe you found the job yourself through an employment portal and they call you in for an interview. It's an initial interview. Um, what are things that you've seen that have unfortunately cost the individual the role? The
Okay.
candidate who is perfect, you vetted this individual, you see that this is the right person for the job, but for one reason or another, it just didn't work out.
Yeah, okay. I mean, we do a lot here at Involved Solutions about prepping people for an interview because it's important, right? We've got through the first hurdle, we've got them that interview. Now you need to impress. And look, the basics are true here. Make sure you're dressed correctly. Make sure you go on time. Yeah. Make sure you look presentable. And most importantly, make sure you've done your preparation. Prepare for this interview. Where have a look at the company news, look at the LinkedIn profile of the person you're going to go meet, understand some talking points that you can discuss. And most importantly, know your CV, know what you're going to talk about. Okay. Preparation is key, but also knowing how to structure your answers in an interview is probably the most important thing. You've got to be able to tell a story with what you're doing.
Mm.
Um, Interviews should be interactive, they should be going both ways. We always tell people that you're also interviewing the client as much as they're interviewing you. So, what that means is that you should be asking them as many questions as you can as possible. So, you should be able to have that conversation, make it flow. One of the key things that we always tell our candidates is learn the STAR methodology.
We've got that
So,
on screen. I can put that up on there. You and I were talking about this, and I thought it would be worthwhile to put it on the deck for something for people to look at visually and also include in the presentation that they can review at a later
yeah,
point.
so look, I mean, this is a very simple way to structure any answer that comes to you. It's STAR. So you're talking about the situation. So explain the situation. What was the challenge that you were looking at? What was the task? So T is for task. Describe the task that you undertook. And we got here percentages. I mean, look, these percentages you can take with a pinch of salt. The action is very important. The A is for action. That is, what did you do? Yeah. What did you do that was so important that helped move the needle? Okay. And then finally, the R is the result. So when you're asked a question in any interview scenario, if you can try and follow this STAR methodology, follow this structure, because the worst thing that can happen, Eamon, is that you go in there and you just start waffling. And I've seen it so many times. People do it on the phone to me or my team. You'll ask them one question, they'll be talking for 15 minutes, and you can't even try and stop them. And really, you need to be engaging when you talk. So when you're going to go for an interview, try and pick out 3 or 4 topics that you know or you think they're going to ask you about. Okay. You'll know from the job description, or your recruitment consultant would have already told you what type of things they're going to ask you about. Okay. So already have it planned out. I'm going to talk about this scenario. I'm going to talk about this key achievement that I did in my last role. I'm going to explain the situation. I'm going to talk about the task. I'm going to talk about the actions that I took and the results that I drove home.
Okay. I would imagine as an employer, there's what you're trying to derive from this conversation, from this STAR method is number one, does this person have the technical proficiency for the role itself? Do they know the job, right? That would be probably at the top of the list. And not to speak on your behalf, but I would imagine that's what an employer is the first thing is do they have the skill set? Do they have the technical proficiency to do the job? Secondly, is that are they an effective communicator? I would
Yeah.
imagine that's probably essential as well. It's not good enough that you know how to do the job, but are you able to work in a team environment? Are you able to communicate this to, other stakeholders within the company? Are you able to effectively communicate the challenges or the solutions themselves? what other things are they trying to, I guess, ascertain from an interview?
So I guess, you raised a really good point there, Eamon. There is right now where we have an abundance of candidates in the market, an abundance of applicants in the market. It could be that, let's say we take 10 candidates, they all know how to do the job. They're technically proficient, like you say. But if only three of them can effectively communicate, whether that's communicating above or below, they're the ones that are going to get through the process. Okay.
Mm,
Because
mm,
you can't do your job effectively if you can't communicate with the people around you. And depending what company you're going to, they're also looking for other key attributes. They're looking for someone who's entrepreneurial. Yeah. They're looking for someone who's going to bring effective ideas. They might be looking for someone who's done something similar in the past. So
mm.
these are all, like I said to you a minute ago, unless you're asking questions to actually find out what are they looking for, then you're not going to know this. So by asking the right questions in the interview as well, so when you're asked a question, you can reply with the answer and then say, hey, what are you looking for, etc., etc. You can then feed that back, sell the point.
Okay. No, thanks for that. It thinks that it's common sense, but at the same time, when you're in that hot seat, being interviewed by either an individual or a panel of individuals, you can reasonably understand why it's very stressful and it can be quite challenging, presenting at that point in time in front of
No,
a.
definitely. I mean, if you and I were having a conversation and we started to talking about something and you wanted to know more information, you'd ask me a question. You'd say, well, what does that mean? Go into more detail. There's no reason why you can't do that in an interview because
Mhm.
it should be a conversation. And I think more people should go in there with the confidence of thinking like that way.
I get you. I get you. Prep wise, so we talked about the STAR method as being a very effective approach. But of course, embed a bit of storytelling. I think that's a key one. So I don't think you're just going to come in and say, this was the situation, this was the task, da 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 da. But a little bit more conversation, more of an interaction that you're having
Yeah,
with your potential.
definitely. Definitely. Tell them a story. Take them through a journey, from start to finish. It will flow better.
I would imagine that has a lot to do with relatability. That if the employers, will potentially like you, can see themselves, trusting you in the role, I think the storytelling adds to that, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you've done your research and you've looked at certain news articles about what this company is doing most recently, you've looked at the person's LinkedIn who you're going to meet, and you can ask those, just have a little icebreaker conversation at the beginning or during that interview, or ask questions around that. The more engaging you can be, the better chance you have of securing that interview and securing that, the next interview, should I say?
I got you. I got you. Okay, well, let's be optimistic here that we've managed to nail the interview. We did so well, and we get an offer that came
Mm.
down the pipeline.
Congratulations, Eamon.
Hey, thank you very much. Navigating the offer stage is very uncomfortable for a lot of individuals.
Yeah.
The idea of negotiating, for the role that they've been offered is usually uncomfortable. And actually, rather than make an assumption, I want to ask the audience actually, just from a poll perspective, is what do you do when you've been offered a role? And we just want to understand a little bit more about what is it that you're looking for. Is it just the salary? Is it maybe the bonus or incentive scheme? Is it maybe intangibles such as the health and family benefits? Is it the idea of working remotely? Is this what's of importance for you? Or is it career progression? What stands out to you when you're receiving an offer? What is the most important for you? And while everybody's kind of responding to the survey apps, I mean, walk us through what's the best way to navigate an offer, and whether it be an offer that's in line with your expectations from a salary perspective and one that isn't, it's below.
Yeah, I mean, the best way is to have your recruitment agent do it for you, to be honest.
Well, not all of us are, going to be, having the benefit of
Uh,
an agent.
of
So,
course. Um, Look, I'm not joking when I say that because it genuinely is easier to have someone do it on your behalf, right? So if you can take yourself out of that situation, remove yourself, let someone else negotiate for you. Now, we're going to go on to the assumption that this person has found the job themselves. Now, hopefully, ideally, from the very beginning of the process, you've already set out your expectations. Okay. Hopefully, they've already said, you've already asked you what you're looking for. Now, if they haven't, you've already got in mind what you're looking for. Now, when this poll comes back, it's going to be interesting to see where people's heads are at because everyone's completely individual here, you know? So person A might be looking for that flexibility and the ability to work remotely. So that's most important to them. So that's what they're going to negotiate for. And they don't really mind too much about the salary. Person
Mm.
B has got 3 kids. So he's looking for a package with education allowance. Okay. I think everyone's going to be very different here. But in terms of how you navigate the offer and how you actually negotiate this, it really depends on how you got into this from the very beginning. Have you told whether you're dealing with the HR or whoever you're dealing with in the company, what it is that you're expecting? If the company is coming in under what they're offering, what you asked for initially, then you need to find out why, because maybe there's an additional perk that's being offered that compensates for this.
Mm. So look at it
I think
holistically.
now, go on, did you want to say?
No, I was going to say you're saying look at it holistically. Don't just only pay to the headline number of base salary. Look at all the other benefits that are included in the offer itself. Or if not communicated, maybe ask.
Definitely. I mean, ask to see the full package. I think what we are seeing right now, not with some clients, most definitely, and it's not ideal, but because of the influx of people into the region right now, they know they can get candidates for cheaper. So let's say one role last year was paying 40,000 dirhams, for example, hypothetically speaking. If that person leaves and they replace that person, they might replace it with somebody who's get paid 35,000. That person might have come from the UK, they might come from India, wherever they might have come from. And when they compare 35,000 to what they were earning back home, it seems like a great offer. But in
Mm.
reality, compared to what the person in the last role was being paid, it's not good. How do they know? They're not going to know that. Okay. So I think negotiating your offer, um, you need to have you need to know already what you need, based on your situation. If you have kids, do you need education allowance? If there is an education allowance, how much is that going to cost you? So I think this comes back to sort of your speciality, Eamon, and that's understanding your financial liabilities. So, but in
Mhm.
terms of how you can negotiate the best offer, my thing is if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I love your point about, the idea of using an agent that it's much easier. And I take examples of this where if people are looking to buy a house, or a person who's looking to sell their house, historically, whenever an individual has tried to sell their house, they have such a vested interest and emotional attachment that it's actually worked out not so great from either negotiation perspective or from actual closing perspective. If someone says, I'll offer you this is the home, and you're negotiating your own home, it's very difficult not to become emotional. And more often than not, for my colleagues who are, real estate agents, not only here, but overseas, they'll tell me most of those deals tend to fall apart because it's very
Mhm.
difficult to negotiate on your behalf. You have your emotions attached, you attach value to that dollar amount. But when you have a second party or third party who's able to have that conversation, that takes the awkwardness out of it for you. This person's fighting for you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, like you say, that would be the ideal scenario. Is they have someone like us in their corner to fight for them. And I think if you don't, I think you just need to take it slowly, and just evaluate it every step of the way, and really think, does it make sense? Does it make sense? Because if you're not working, then what does being unemployed for another month mean to you? Okay.
Mhm.
If you are working and you are happy, I mean, happy-ish, well, there's always a reason why you interviewed in the first place, right? So I think you just need to weigh it up and you need to have people around you that you can talk to about this, if it's not a recruitment consultant, it could be your partner, could be your parents, could be your peers, your friends. But I think you need to understand, why were you looking for a job in the first place? Yeah. Were you trying to get out of an environment that you didn't like? Yeah. So to get out of the environment that you didn't like, what are you willing to sacrifice? Yes, if you get the pay rise, great. But if you're moving for the same money, what does it mean for you?
Mm.
Maybe for your work-life balance, maybe for your mental health. So I think
Mm.
negotiating a better offer really just depends, how much patience do you have? I think, how much balls do you have? Are you willing to say no?
Mm.
Sometimes you need to say no, and walk away. Who knows? The client might come back and offer you more money. Happens more often than not.
Really? Okay, I did not know that. Actually, that my perception would have
Well,
been
not. I mean, I don't want to say to everyone, don't accept the offer that you got, in case you lose your job, and don't blame me for that. But I mean, know
absolutely
your
not to accept
limitations.
it. I've said say no. Well, look, if as per our audience, base salary was the most important variable
Yeah,
for them when it comes to navigating the offer stage itself, and it makes sense because that's something that it's tangible. You see it in your bank account every
yeah.
single month, and as a result, you can do, you can live the life and quality that you want. Career progression came in at second place, as far as what's important for our audience themselves. Anything.
And I think this goes back to the point about packages, right? Where companies don't offer the packages like they used to with the education allowance, with the relocation and what have you. People are just looking for that fixed cost, you know? And we do see a lot of our clients now just offering that fixed lump sum. You do what you want with it. It makes sense.
Let's do a quick role play here. So I'm the candidate and you're the employer. You've given me an offer, and historically what I've seen is that they typically will give you the offer over the phone first. And I don't know if that's still the case from nowadays, but they give you the offer over the phone. What should I be doing next as a potential, employee of that company?
If I was the candidate, I'd ask them to put it all in writing to let me review it. Yeah, even if it does sound great, you don't know what great is, and when you're on the phone, you might have missed little bits. So if they've called you to make you the offer, then and then it's the company directly. If it's coming from your recruitment agent, it's a bit different because they might have done all the pre-vetting already and they know what you're looking for. Okay. But if you're talking directly from the company, I'd always say, right, great, thank you for that. Always thank them. Be very grateful for the offer. You're looking forward to work with them, but you'd like to see everything written down on paper before you make a decision. Yeah.
Okay.
If you're dealing with us and you're coming from a recruitment consultant, then we've already covered all these bits off, and we probably had 4 or 5 conversations from the very beginning all the way through the stages. If we get you this offer, you're going to be happy, etc., etc. But when it's coming directly, I think you need to take your time and understand. You want to see it written down. What does it all mean?
Okay. So suppose that we have that conversation, they email you the offer. Everything looks great, benefits, perks, etc. But we're not happy with the base salary. What do you do next? How do you take that conversation forward?
It just depends, right? Is it in? Is it below? I think every case is a case by case. There's no right or wrong answer here, Eamon, because it depends. Was it below what you guys had initially spoken about in the past, or is it? It's more than what you're earning right now. It's in the bracket they told you about, but you're still not happy. If you're still not happy, like I said before, just ask the question, and try and put it back with some points. Say, listen, I'm really grateful for this offer. But what I'm looking for is this. And then back it up with say, I've got X amount of years experience. I've been doing X, Y, Z. I think I can bring so much value to your business. You can't just, you need to ask for something, but give something as well. So
Well,
say, I
that was
need
the
more
reason why I
money.
asked that,
And,
actually.
and,
Yeah.
and what's the reason why they should give you more money? You know?
So you would structure it in that way is that you would try to validate why you deserve more money, and you would highlight more about the value that you're going to add to the business. Would you ever, recommend someone to take the approach, well, your competitor is paying this and your competitor is paying that? Does that work at all in any shape or
It
form?
can do. Look, I think it just depends how in demand that role is. If we look 2 or 3 years ago, fintechs were hiring an immense pace. Software engineers were highly in demand, and they could have easily have said that. Now, if we look at it, it's AI. AI engineers, heads of AIs, AI managers, whatever it may be, machine learning. That's quite a hot topic at the moment, and I think sometimes you got to be very careful with doing that because yes, your competitor could be paying more for that role, but then why are you not interviewing there? So it can easily be spun around on you. But I don't think there's anything wrong with saying the market is dictating this. If they're paying less than the market, then for sure. Say, if you know your facts and your figures and you know for a fact that they're underpaying you by 10%, say, look, I know the market is paying this. This is what I'm looking for. And if you offer me this, I'd be happy to accept.
Okay,
But it's worthwhile understanding why they offered you less.
fair. And the key thing is ask. If you don't ask, you
The
don't
key
get.
thing is asking look, and it is as the candidate directly to the employer, it is difficult, granted, but I think at the end of the day, this is your job, this is your career. You've got to be there for the next ideally 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And if you're going to accept an offer you're not happy with, there's going to be resentment.
I get you. Thank you for that. I think it's a good time to start taking questions from the audience. And thank you so much for guiding us through this presentation. I'm just gonna stop sharing here so it'll be easier for me to kind of review the questions. Here's a great question. I'll start off at very back the beginning. It's by Anonymous. It's a very popular name here, by the way. Apps just let you know. How can I quantify my achievements if I work in a creative industry, apart from awards and referrals? Is a portfolio enough? What would recruiters be looking for in a portfolio?
Yeah, creative guys are unique because typically it would be a CV with words, numbers, etc. Designers typically use portfolios. So any head of design, when they're hiring for a design team, they'll look at the portfolios. So highlight the case studies and work that you've done in the past, and that's what they'll be looking for more often than not.
So I'm not a graphic designer. I still draw a cat the same way that I drew it when I was 5 years old. But when you're a graphic designer, is the portfolio, there's no proprietary information, or is there no
There'll be
tangible
certain
law?
things they'll know as a designer for a company, they'll know what they can showcase and what they can't showcase. For example, they'll typically use like Behance, or there's other websites out there. They'll have their own personal portfolio, which they'll then send to clients, but they'll know what they can put on and what they cannot put on
And I
due
guess
to NDAs and what have you.
I got you. So in that case, the numbers, the equivalent of numbers would be just what kind of work have you done? What's the quality of
Showcase.
work? And they'll just showcasing. Oh, that's
They're
brilliant.
showcasing their UX and their UI work.
Okay.
That's what they're showcasing.
Thank you for that question, Anonymous. I've got a question by Mohammed here. He goes, you just mentioned to add numbers for your achievements, but what if you work in a company which doesn't quantify success or achievements in your yearly reviews?
So I would say, how do they measure success? So if they're talking about their CV or they're talking about their LinkedIn, what we're looking for here is what are they doing that is differentiating themselves? Okay, it could be that they're using specific tools, okay, whether that's software tools or whatever tools. I mean, typically now would be software tools, I guess. But what are they using that is in demand? That's what we're looking for when we're running keyword searches, or we're running an AI bot on LinkedIn, or Boolean search, whatever we're running. We're looking for specific, tangible keywords that we can search against. So they should have done something in their last 12 months that has really made an impact on the business. Okay,
Hmm.
that's what we're looking to see.
Okay. So I think it's easier when you have, from a quantitative perspective, if you work in an environment in which there's targets and the achievements, and you essentially could be able to kind of put that on a CV on LinkedIn quite easily. But like in the case, for example, as Anonymous, it's more about qualitative, and other industries are also more qualitative. What wording would you use in
So
that?
I'd say I'd list out potentially what I was doing. You're still having an end result in terms of the tasks that you're doing, right? There would still be, for example, you even if you're doing that role, you're still doing well or you're still doing not well. Okay. So
That's
what are
true.
the you're getting paid for a reason. You're still there at the end of the month, because if you weren't, you wouldn't be doing your job. So what are the key achievements that you're doing in your job? Well, what are you doing in your job? That's what we're
Yeah.
listing here, you know?
And it goes back to your point about people are just putting their job spec, just their A's and O's on there versus talking about, yeah, this is what I do, but this is how great that I've done it and how well I've done at that role itself.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm trying to think what this guy does, and that I can give an example, but I don't, without knowing exactly what he does, I can't give an actual example. But I think he's just got to break down his role in terms of what he does on a day-to-day basis, on a month-to-month basis, and think, what have I delivered, or where have I added value, and list that as part of one of his achievements that he can say alongside with what tools, or what teams is he working with. Maybe he's working with different teams, and what the work that he does with those different teams has an impact on the business.
okay, fair enough. Thank you for that, Mohammed. I hope that helps. Um, Anonymous says, please let's talk about LinkedIn Easy Apply versus LinkedIn jobs that lead to the company's page. Is LinkedIn Easy Apply effective considering scammers use it a lot? Oh, I did not know that, actually. Yeah.
Probably a question more for LinkedIn than for myself.
Hmm.
Um, I- when I was an applicant, LinkedIn Easy Apply was the easy way to apply. Yes, it's in the name.
Clearly.
Because If not, I would click on it and I'd have to go to the company's website and then apply via the company's website. And typically, companies have horrible ATS systems, which are applicant tracking systems, where they'd make you fill in every single detail that's already on your CV.
Right.
So technology's come a long way. And even when you apply with us on our website, we extract all the data. It's all being done in the background to then populate our database. So I don't know specifically for this answer whether, but my guess is that it's easy apply is the right way to do it. But back to my point, don't apply for every single job you see, hoping that someone's going to see your CV that it's relevant for. Only apply what you're actually suitable for.
Brilliant, brilliant. There's a question here by, I hope I say your name, it's Charlie. And I think it was more they're sharing their experiences. They said, "Hey, thank you for the session. I've been looking for opportunities in the GCC and especially the UAE. I have diversified my approaches. I've gone there physically. I've used Wasta. I've used LinkedIn connections, and every single person that I contact tells me the same thing. You've got a great profile and CV, but we just don't have opportunities at the moment. The problem and advantage is that I have diversified experience and not too much, um, diversified experience and not too much 5 years. I think what I'm gathering from that is that they've done a lot of different things over the last 5 years. What
Okay.
can I do to enhance my chances?
Okay, so I think this is more going in sort of potential career coaching. If they've done a lot of different things over the last 5 years, look, for us, I'd always say if any of my friends or even a candidate is coming to me and saying, Abs, I don't know what to do now. I just want a job. That's very different to somebody who's coming to me and say, I am, let's say I'm a CFO and I know what I'm doing next, or I'm a head of FP&A working in finance. I know what I'm doing next. If somebody's just saying, look, I've done loads of different things over the last 5 years. Now I'm just looking for a job. It's very difficult to help that person. Okay, they should know what they're trying to do. Okay. Because if you don't know what you're trying to do, then how can you structure your CV or your LinkedIn specifically to target that job? Okay. So I think for that person, it's more just trying to, do they know what they're trying to do? Because if they do know what they're trying to do, then everything that they're doing should be revolving about making them look like someone who's very, very specialized and very experienced in that field.
Thanks for that. And Charlie, if I can add maybe some personal experience when it comes to this, is that so even those who are, sector specific, I've been in banking for most of my career, and we also kind of go through the same challenges as well too. Even we're focused, we're in that one sector that sometimes it may not be as easy, but it's just about just continually trying. I mean, at one point, it's that no is going to turn into a yes. And I can tell you examples throughout my career where the doors were shut right in front of my face, and I just found a window to be able to kind of climb in one way or another. It's just about persistence and continuously trying. But on that point, in this case, Charlie comes from a variety of different industries, and I have heard apps, and tell me if this is more anecdotal, if it's a rumor, or if it's actual truth to it, that if somebody wants to do a career change, so you've got a
Mm.
career banker, 20 years. But during those 20 years, they've really gotten into maybe software engineering or programming, et cetera, et cetera. And now they want to kind of go into that field. I heard it's almost near impossible to do that. Is that true?
I'd say it's not easy, especially in this region, Eamon. In this region, people typically want to hire. If they're hiring for a job, they're looking to hire somebody exactly who's a direct match, who's been doing the same thing for the last 2 or 3 years. That's
Mhm.
how this region works, unfortunately. So when people are trying to make that change, it's not, look, nothing's impossible. Challenging, I'd use the word challenging, but I'd say for that person, they should be doing all the right courses, going and learning all the right courses, and they should be actively potentially trying to find projects that they can be doing outside of work hours where they can be getting real world experience. Because the reality is certifications and education doesn't always lead you to getting the job. It's more the hands-on experience.
Good.
So if that person is changing from a banker to a software engineer, maybe there's a huge pay cut to come with that as well to find just to get that right experience.
I was just going to ask actually, should they expect maybe not as senior of a role? Should they expect
Oh,
more of a
100%.
junior role? That thing I just goes without
Unless it's
saying.
a transferable role, it's transferable skills within a typical similar type of industry. But if it's a complete change, then Why would a company pay the same amount of money? Doesn't make sense.
Makes sense. I've got another question by Anonymous, who asked, what would you recommend for an individual who's outside of the UAE and looking for a role?
What would I recommend? I'd say, look, things don't often change there. Make sure your CV is tailored to your expertise and the role that you're applying for. Um, Over the last 15 years, I mean, I've hired hundreds and hundreds of people, and most of them have come from outside the country. When I look at what myself and the team are working on right now, a lot of our clients do look for candidates outside the country because they're looking for that experience. So being outside the country is not a detriment to you at all. And in fact, sometimes it's an advantage and it's what a client wants. And like I said earlier, like I think for people that are risking it all, quitting their job, coming here with the hope to find the job, you're just burning money. So I think people that are not in this region, I don't think they need to be disheartened if they're trying to find a job here, because if they are applying for a job that they're skilled in and they've got experience in, they're not going to be discounted just because they're not here, is my opinion.
Mhm.
Not
Uh,
always, anyway.
Fair. I've got a couple of questions related to the same topic. So that's again anonymous, and they were talking more about the package itself. Um, when we were talking about doing a competitive analysis about what other employers are paying, well, how do you do that? Like, how do you understand and how do you find out what the competitor pays for this specific role? And that so it's a two-part question. One is how do you do the research? Which websites do you go to, or where do you get insights to know what this job pays prior to going to the negotiation stage? And the second one is, it was more of a comment, and they're just trying to figure out what happened. They said, "Look, I've been headhunted. I've aced the interview. I've been told by the hiring managers that they're looking forward to having me on the team, but then the package never works out." And I was thinking about that, that advice that you gave that you should be having this conversation as early as possible at the very beginning. But it looks like in
Yeah,
this situation, I don't
definitely.
know if they're having that conversation or not, but it seems like that it always tends to kind of go by the wayside at the end. So one is, where do you get information about pay? And number two is, how do you solve for this problem, or how do you address this problem?
Okay, I think in this region, it's not as open as it is, for example, in America or the UK. In America and what different companies pay. You can just do a Google search and find that. There's very good websites for different markets that do that. A lot of recruitment agencies do salary surveys. I think they can sometimes be misleading because they don't often account for all the complete package. And unfortunately, salaries, this is a very unfortunate, but it's a reality, and we might as well talk about it. But salaries do differentiate here based on passport as well, which I don't agree with, but it happens. And even now in 2025, it still happens. So it's very difficult to get that competitive analysis based on salaries. Look, we know it here at Involved Solutions, and my peers will know it because we speak to companies, so we know what they're paying. If you're an individual just going in, I mean, look, you can try asking on Reddit anonymously and see if people will tell you, but I don't really think you have a way to know unless you can, jump on the internet and try and find that information, or people in the industry and you can ask them. That information is not as readily available as it is, let's say, in America and the US. Now, the second person, look, it's a shame, right? It's you've done all that hard work and you're not got what you wanted. But my question to you is, did you ask the question at the very beginning when someone's approaching you about a job? Yeah, look, it's uncomfortable to ask what the salary is, but at the end of the day, we're all here. We all need to put food on the table.
Mm,
So if you're blindly entering into an interview process without having even a scale, maybe they can't tell you the exact salary, but I think that would be a red flag. If a company asks you to interview without even telling you what the salary is
that's
going
what
to be,
salary is. Yeah. What
I
am I
mean,
walking into here? Yeah.
why would you do that?
Fine.
Like,
And it's fair.
not being disrespectful to that person, but it doesn't
Right.
make sense to me because what image are you portraying? It portrays that you'll just interview anywhere, or are you desperate for a job? You don't think about that image that you're portraying, right? You got to qualify. I think going into anything in life, you qualify. When people invest in Sarwa, they'll ask you qualification questions, like what do we get myself in for here? And I think you do that, your due diligence with everything in life. If you're buying a house or buying a car, you try and find out all the information, the ins and outs. So why would you not do it before going for an interview? It doesn't make sense to me.
I think it's just that discomfort that comes along with it, Abs. You feel like
This
as
is
if you're not in a position to negotiate, but really you are. I mean, you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. You want to
100%.
make sure there's an alignment here. And I would say that I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, because this is your field of industry, is that as you get more senior in your career, I think that comfort level just naturally comes because you're a little bit more comfortable in your own, in your own shoes. You're more comfortable with your speciality, and you kind of understand what your value is, and you're much more comfortable at a latter stage of your career to be able to openly say, "Hey, look, what are you offering? This is what I'm looking for." But I would imagine, and I remember myself earlier part of my career, it's like, "Yes, sir, I'll take that salary."
Yeah.
That concept of negotiation didn't even, it was never uttered, from my
But
mouth.
I think that's part of the problem, right? Because then whoever you're meeting with him or interviewing with might see you and think this guy's desperate or this girl's desperate for a new role. They can take advantage. And I think just setting that image from the very beginning, and yeah, maybe it is a seniority thing. I don't know. It could be a cultural thing as well. But
Mm.
to me, I don't think it makes sense. I would never enter into something without knowing the cost or the benefit of what I'm doing, doesn't compute. But yeah, definitely with experience and age, you probably do get a bit more you'd ask it.
There's a couple of questions that are related. One talks about how does an employer view someone who changes jobs every 2 years, but changes jobs as in they actually change companies every 2 years. And the second question, also same scenario, but this person is constantly being promoted within the company. So, 10 years worth of experience for both of them. One person hops around different companies, one person steadily progresses within the company itself.
Yeah.
So great
Okay, it's
question.
good question. And I think people can take this differently. Okay, so I think you should always stay in a job for a minimum of 18 months or 2 years because that is a good time for you to actually deliver results and to grow and to know whether or not the company is going to promote you or you have got access to a different job in that company. You could look at some of the big, huge employers in this region. Look, people were. I spent a short time at Emirates just before COVID, unfortunately, and there were people there who had been there for 25 years. And the reason were is they were able to jump around. And in these big companies, you do have that ability. There are lots of companies around the world where they actually encourage you every 18 months to 2 years to actively move within the organization. Okay. Now, people that are changing jobs every 2 years, I think it's always worth, as an employer or even as a recruitment consultant, if we're not asking the question why, then you should never assume because they might have had to move for many, many reasons. One, they hit a glass ceiling, they couldn't go any further. Two, maybe the company was disbanded, maybe the team made redundancies. So I think there's always a different reason. Now, I don't think there's I don't think there's one's not right and one's not bad, if that makes sense. Because if they've been in the same company for 10 years, but they've changed jobs and been promoted, that's brilliant. The
I agree.
worry could be how are they going to fit into a completely new environment? Someone who's changed jobs every 2 years, and I think this I'm going off a bit of tangent here, but I think if you're at the beginning of your career, I think it's probably more important to do that at the beginning of your career. Okay. So if you're just starting off, the fact that you can show the ability to go from one environment to another, and if you can try and change up the environments, maybe go from a startup to a corporate to a scale up, or even changing industries from telecommunications to insurance to retail, whatever it may be, you're showing adaptability. That person who's been in the same company for 10 years, maybe they're in a comfort zone, that it could be seen that way.
Mm.
Again, I'd have to ask the person the question why. I would never want to assume, but I
That's a
don't
lot.
think, I think both can be seen as great.
I'm very conscious of the fact that we're 5 after 7, and I do want to let everybody go and have their dinners, and also that includes you, Abs.
Okay.
Maybe I'll just take a couple more questions. Are you okay to stick around for a couple more? So I'm trying to get a variety of different concepts here, and and ideas. Here's one. What is one small but powerful action a candidate can take that help them stand out, especially before the formal interview stage? And we've gotten a lot of great insights and advice here, but what is one thing that you have noticed that people do this, they tend to stand out and tends to kind of help them in some shape or form?
Okay, I think preparation. Be prepared. Understand what you're going into. The amount of times, I was speaking to a candidate and they might have interviewed somewhere else, and I asked them, how did that interview go? What did you do to prepare? And they didn't do anything. I would never, and my team here at Involved Solutions, we would never let any candidate go for an interview without being fully prepared. And whether that's us helping them to prepare, them doing their own preparation, it just doesn't happen. Okay. You need to know what the company does before you go there. What have been their latest news? What are their trends? What are they trying to do? What is their mission? What are their values? Go on their career page. Typically every company has a mission that they're trying to achieve. They have values, etc., etc. Know all of these. Go into that interview with all of this written down. There's nothing wrong with having a notebook with all your notes in there, with questions that you want to ask, with facts that you found out about the company, and you want to be dropping that in throughout the process of that interview, of that meeting. I think the key thing they can do is prepare.
Okay. I'll take
And I
one more.
think so. So one thing to add, because I do want to get this point across, but I think as a follow up, if you've gone via a recruitment agent, you should always call them up immediately after the interview and let them know how you got on. Okay, or drop them an email. Okay, if you have gone directly to the company, you should always drop the person that you've just met an email, thanking them for their time. Explain to them how you really enjoyed it and you can see yourself fitting into the environment. You can definitely see yourself doing the job and that you're looking forward to the next stages. So I think just a little extra tip there,
Okay.
what you can do before and what you can do after to add huge value.
Brilliant, brilliant. One last question from the audience and one from me as well too. I'm sorry to steal your time, Abs. Paying a recruitment agent or agency. I've read this in the paper from time to time where certain agencies will say, "Hey, I'll get you this job, but you've got to pay me a little something, something."
Yeah, really, really prolific in this region and really, really unethical. There's, I don't know about you, but I spend far too long on Reddit and I see this come up all the time where
Exactly what I thought too.
people say, "Is this a scam? Is this a scam?" If you think it's a scam, it's a scam. The truth is, it's illegal. And not only is it illegal, it's also unethical for any recruitment agency to charge you to get a job or to get a job interview. Okay. As recruitment consultants, as recruitment agencies, we are paid by the client to find the candidates. Okay. And I think unfortunately, there are people that do fall for this scam where they're promised an interview or they're promised a job and they charge money for it. Just the other day, in fact, I had a candidate from Canada who reached out to me and he was desperate for a job, really wanted to move here, really wanted. And he said, "Abs, what can I do? Well, what can I? How much do I need to? Didn't say how much we need to, because what can we do?" And he was trying to offer me money to ensure that I got him a job, and I was like, it just doesn't work like that. I don't have the power and the capability to make a company hire you specifically. Yeah, what we're paid to do is we're paid to introduce candidates we're paid for doing a lot more than that. We're paid to screen, qualify, find the right candidate and introduce them in the nutshell to the client. And the client will then interview and then select who they want to hire. And then we get paid to do all of this. Okay. So if anyone is asking you for money to help you find a job in terms of they're going to introduce you to people or they're going to get you an interview or they're actually going to get you the job itself, run a mile because it's completely unethical and it's actually illegal, definitely illegal here, definitely legal in the US and in the UK. So never ever pay somebody who says they're going to help you get a job in that manner. I know there's lots of people now doing career coaching and career advice, and that's different. But if they're saying to you specifically, they are going to get you a job and pay me to get you this job, you run a mile.
Thank you for that, Abs. I promise. Very last question. Yay or nay using AI tools to create your CV and your cover letter?
Yeah, okay. It's a it's a good discussion, one that I had with my MD actually just yesterday. Um as my MD would say, I'm not Shakespeare, so I do try to use I do try to use ChatGPT, and maybe I've been a bit I've fallen a bit foul of this most recently. Look, I think you should try and no is the answer. Yes and no is the answer. Okay. You should try and if you're not writing it yourself, it's not coming from the heart, but there's no harm in using it. You should write the content and then you can use it to polish it. But then you should always go back to it and change it because the way it's written on ChatGPT, it's obvious it's done by ChatGPT. So you need to give it the raw ingredients, let it do some work, and then you finesse it. There's nothing wrong with that. If we're not using tools in our daily life, then we're going to be left behind. And ChatGPT it's just a tool, right?
Yeah.
Just when Google search came about, we all search Google search. Whenever we use Google search, we Google it, right? And now people are ChatGPTing it. So hey, it's a brilliant question, Eamon. And I think there's no harm in utilizing it, but understand what its limitations are. It can't do what you can do, you know. And if your CV does look like ChatGPT, you know what's going to happen, you know.
Yeah. Appreciate that, Abs, and appreciate you spending this time with us. And thank you to
Pleasure.
everyone. Look, if any individuals are looking to reach out to you for any career or coaching services, they can message you on LinkedIn. If anything else, Abs
Yeah,
Khan.
drop me a message. Look, if you're looking for a job or a specific job, go to the Involved Solutions website and apply for the job that you're looking for. There's also the place there to upload your CV. If you want to ask me something, a specific question, then drop me a DM on LinkedIn. I do get a lot. I will do my best to get back to you, but always happy to have a chat.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a wonderful evening. Enjoy your dinners, and look forward to seeing you next time. Ciao, ciao.